Welcome in to another Titan Bros video, but as you see, my little bro Josiah has been replaced by the one and only, the man, the myth, and the legend, Tyler Rowland from the Locked on Titans podcast. You also have another channel that I haven't been able to check out yet because my job requires a lot of driving, so I can't really watch. So I haven't got to those videos yet, but I certainly will.
Yeah, well, it's long form film breakdown stuff. So maybe good with dinner, something like that. Definitely don't watch while driving. It's not audio friendly for the audio only folks. So yeah, for sure, make sure that you're not doing that.
Yeah, so I was telling Josiah, the guy who's usually on the show with me, I told him, he was asking basically what you're like. And I said, the thing about Tyler, he is the number one of anyone that I've ever seen when it comes to breaking down film. Also, the deep dives that he does into the draft prospects. Because I'll be honest, huge Titan fan, been a huge Titan fan since 1999, like yourself.
Same.
But I've never been a big college football guy.
Right.
And because of that, like, I'll know big names. I know Roma Dunze. I know Malik Neighbors. Like, I know big names, but like 99% of what I learned is from watching your video on the way to the gym every morning. And you give me nice deep dives on into everybody. But anyways, you've been buttered up enough. I wrote down some questions I'm going to ask you just to see what your opinion on these matters are.
Sure.
So let's just say, Tyler Rowland, you are the general manager to the Tennessee Titans. What are your three main off-season moves as free agency is just around the corner?
Well, number one, I'm moving my family into a mansion if I'm the general manager of the Tennessee Titans, because I'm getting paid a lot more now than I am as a podcast host. No, all jokes aside, I think number one, you got to attack offensive line. So you have to have a good plan for the offensive line. I think that starts in free agency. Obviously, you need to be aggressive with if you have players in free agency that you like on the offensive line that you think would be a good fit, you have to be aggressive about it right out of the gate, all over their agent, letting them know how, interested you really are, because the Titans cannot afford to not improve on the offensive line. I think number two, similarly, you're attacking wide receiver. That it has to be. And I think that Titans fans need to start to accept a reality where they don't get any of like the top names on the, T. Higgins probably getting tagged. Mike Evans, why would he leave Tampa Bay? He's been there his whole career and done well. Calvin Ridley probably goes back to the Jags. Michael Pittman, the Colts aren't going to let Michael Pittman go. That would be malpractice for Anthony Richardson. So if you're outside of that, you have to start looking at who would actually be worth giving some money to, who would make sense. So I think having a plan and attacking aggressively on the offensive line, but understanding that you may not have the top tier options at wide receiver. So having a backup plan, a plan B, a plan C for what to do at wide receiver if the top names aren't available. Because you can't just go out there and pay anybody just to have somebody and spend the money. They have to be worth it. So I think the Titans really need to focus on that B or C tier, I guess, of free agents at wide receiver. I think after that, though, number three is all about preparing Will Levis. Whatever it takes to prepare Will Levis to get him. I mean, this is a new play caller, a new playbook. They're going back to, the Shanahan. People don't realize this all the time, I think, and it's, something that people probably wouldn't think about. But there are different types of like foundations of playbooks in the NFL. There's the Earnhardt Perkins system, which is like more New England Patriots. Tim Kelly brought that and installed that, where the Titans with Arthur Smith coming off Matt LaFleur had been using the Shanahan, playbook. So it's going to be a change in terminology for Will Levis. I am going all out, doing whatever it takes to get him ready, whatever he needs, whatever he wants. I'm providing that to him, and I'm getting him the information that I can get to him as quickly as possible, which I'm sure that has already happened. But that nothing is going to matter if Will Levis isn't the guy and isn't comfortable. And I think that's the most exciting thing about Brian Callahan being hired is you got to think that, out of coaches that are actually available, you can't just steal Matt LaFleur back from the Packers or steal Sean McVay from the Rams or steal Kyle Shanahan from San Francisco. So I think with the coach that was actually available, that's what makes Brian Callahan so exciting, is because he can get the best out of Will Levis. So you got to fix the things around Will Levis, but also part of that, you have to give Will Levis everything he needs with no question.
Yeah. Regardless of whether you think it was the right or the wrong decision to fire Vrabel, I know what you think. I know you very passionately feel a certain way. I was a fence rider on this one. I liked a lot of things that he did, like the fact that he made Terrell Williams the head coach for that one playoff game. Right. He just did a lot of things like that, and players loved him. And I loved a lot of the way he did things like that. And he was on the competition committee, I think he was.
Good coach. Yeah,
he's a good
football coach.
But I just didn't like the defensive-minded aspect and the fact that you're going to either have a good offensive coordinator, and if you do, he's gone in a year or two, or you're going to have a bad one, you got to fire him, or you're going to have an average one, and then you're just going to always have an average system, an average scheme, and eventually he's either going to get nabbed or you're going to have to cut ties with him as well. So that was my biggest issue with Vrabel, which, again, a big plus there, getting Brian Callahan. He was honestly my number 3 option behind. I hated to follow the crowd, but I kind of liked the Bobby Slowick and the Ben Johnson.
Me too.
But Brian Callahan was number 3, and since the other two stayed where they were, we got the best of the best, in my opinion.
Exactly.
So definitely pumped about that one. All right, I'm going to move this conversation to obviously wide receiver and offensive line is the biggest issues we have on this team, in my opinion. What if DeAndre Hopkins wants out? What if he says, I'm 31, I'll be 32 when the season starts. I want to go chase a ring. And if we grant him that release and we release him or we trade him, does that change what we should do with the number 7 pick overall, in your opinion? Because I know you and I are both kind of Joe Alt, the alt cult, I think they call it.
Yeah, the alt cult, man.
Yeah, we're both in there. But if we lose DeAndre Hopkins and Treylon Burks and Kyle Phillips are our number 1, number 2 wide receiver, does that change your opinion on what we should do at number 7?
Well, I'll say this. It would not change my opinion on what to do at number 7. I think if Marvin Harrison Jr. is there, which he won't be, you take him. But if he's not there, which he won't be anyways, you take Joe Alt. Odds are Joe Alt isn't going to be there anyways. But for me, no, it wouldn't change anything. But luckily, Gabriel, luckily we saw on Thursday that one of these rumor Twitter accounts put, Hopkins may be looking to move on, blah, blah, blah. And Hopkins retweeted it and said, cap. So it looks like we can put to bed any conversation or any notion that DeAndre Hopkins won't be back next year. And that's critical. I've had some people in my YouTube comments like, what if we could trade DeAndre Hopkins as a way to get T. Higgins? And you can't. The Titans are not in a position where they can subtract good players. Like they just simply aren't in that spot. So it's not, you let go of Hopkins and then you add this guy and this guy. No, it's the Titans need to add this guy and this guy with DeAndre Hopkins. Like you need a good group at wide receiver, not just one good player. So luckily, based on what Hopkins said, he's going to be back. That's great news for the Titans because they don't need to just add guys. They need to keep the good players that they actually do have. And I think that while the roster has been bad the last few years, the Titans aren't like completely devoid of talent. Like there are good players on the team, DeAndre Hopkins being one of them. So him kind of putting a knife through the heart of that rumor account, which, man, you guys got to stop listening to NFL Rums, ML football. Like these people don't know. It's conjecture, educated guesses. It's not real reporting. And some people online treat it like that. But luckily Hopkins was able to put a dagger in that nonsense tweet, but also put a dagger in any fear that he may want out or he may ask out or he may want to leave Tennessee. So luckily enough, we don't have to worry about that anymore. But again, it's not about, going out and getting the highest price free agent and letting go everything you else have. They need to keep Hopkins around. He's clearly got a good connection with Will Levis. And is DeAndre Hopkins a high level number 1 wide receiver now? No. But he could be a very, very good number 2 wide receiver. And hopefully that's a position he can be in during his time with the Titans so that he can thrive. Yeah,
well, let's be honest. DeAndre Hopkins, like you just said, he's either a low-tier number 1 or the top of the top of the top 2. But wouldn't you say the same thing about T. Higgins, which is why it would make 0 sense to just lose one to get the other?
Exactly. So they need to add those guys together. You need You need more than one good wide receiver in the NFL nowadays. And I know that as Titans fans, we all have PTSD. And I think that we don't, that, a lot of people just watch Titans games and they don't look around the NFL and see what it's like with other teams. And it makes it hard to have a good, realistic approach to what the Titans situation is. But the Titans have just been, malnourished when it comes to wide receivers. And we don't realize how important they are because we haven't had them. So we've told ourselves, hey, you just need one good one and you'll be, no, you need a couple, So, adding, it's not just about getting these guys. You need to add them to DeAndre Hopkins to build out your wide receiver core more. So I think that it's great news that Hopkins is saying that he's going to be back by theory of deduction, really, by, saying, this rumor about me leaving's dumb to me, equal, going to be back. And adding to him and having that be trying to slot him down one spot in the wide receiver group would be incredibly helpful for everyone.
Yeah, I completely agree. So I almost pulled out my hair this morning on the way to the gym because you answered a question that I had already written down for you 10 days ago. As soon as we figured out we were going to do this. And I was thinking, and this is before I heard everybody else covering it too. I was thinking, Kevin Byard. He is Tyler Rowland's favorite Tennessee Titan of all time, if I am correct.
True. It's true.
I was like, he is probably a cap casualty for the Eagles, in my humble opinion.
For sure.
How interested in a reunion would you be? You didn't deep dive into it in the last video, but you did briefly discuss it.
Well, I think it would make sense. I mean, here's the truth of the matter. It's all about price. It's not like Kevin Byard's a bum now. It's not like all of a sudden he's terrible. He's still a high quality safety in the NFL, one of the top 10, top 15 safeties in the NFL. So, the Titans couldn't afford to pay him $20 million of their cap money. He's not worth that now, but if he's a cap casualty from the Eagles and the Titans can pay him, $7, $8, $9 million.
Yeah, that's doable.
Then why not? Why, because they're going to need to add another safety. There's just no way that they can go into next year with. I liked Kayvon Wallace at the end of the year. But I don't think that he can be slated as your starting safety. The thing is, if you have Kayvon Wallace and Amani Hooker, and then you add Kevin Byard back in that rotation, and you can have KB be somebody who's next to the line of scrimmage. Think about Logan Ryan. When he was here with the Titans, he played a lot in the nickel. He was physical against the run. He would play zone, keep his eyes on the quarterback, play forward, not backwards. If they could put Kevin Byard in that role, I think it would make a ton of sense. And I don't know if KB would be open to it. Maybe he has a sour taste in his mouth because he got traded and the way things went down. But if he's open to coming back, I think at the right price, of course, it would make a ton of sense. And he doesn't strike me as somebody who wants to bounce around a bunch of different teams. Just doesn't seem like the type of guy that he is. So leaving Philly and going to sign with another team, I think there are a lot of things that could line up for Kevin Byard to come back. But I think the Titans would have to be smart still, in the draft, about getting some safeties in the pipeline, because obviously Kevin Byard isn't a long-term solution.
Yeah. The thing about bringing Kevin Byard back, he seemed to have left on good terms. It's not like we didn't re-sign him and couldn't agree with the contract. We traded him. Right. So, and he acted like he's just all love for Tennessee, which is completely fine with me. And like you said, we don't need to give another 15, 16 million a year contract, but something they can't do that. Yeah. It's like 6 to 9 million. He probably wouldn't take 6, but 7, 8, 9 million a year. I'm good with that for a 2-year deal. He's 30, right?
Yeah. Should be 30
31. Now. So yeah. Let him play till he's 32. So yeah, I'm definitely all in for that. Let me see what else I have wrote down here for you. I can't even read my handwriting. So here,
I know how that is.
chicken scratch. I waited tables.
I mess
for
up my
5
notes
years.
all the time. I'll say something wrong. Even the other episode that I recorded that just came out tonight. I'd got Chidobe Awuzie's games played over the last 4 years mixed up with Hollywood Brown because I could barely read my writing. So
yeah, I got you. Oh, that's something I meant to say earlier when you're talking about wide receivers. I saw a couple Titan fans talking, and someone saying, "Oh, what if we keep DeAndre Hopkins? What if we sign Hollywood Brown? He's not going to be the highest paid guy. And what if we took Malik Neighbors at 7? If Joe Alt and Ola Fashanu were gone?" And I was like, "That sounds amazing." But there were so many people in the comments that were saying, "We don't need that many wide receivers." And I wanted to be like, why don't we? Why don't we?
Yeah. Yeah, that's insane to me. They absolutely do need that many wide receivers. I think that would be ideal, honestly. And I get where you're at. I personally am taking Malik Neighbors over Ola Fashanu. If that's the choice that I have, I'm going to go with Neighbors. Not that I think Fashanu is a bad player, but I just think Malik Neighbors is going to be a more impactful player. And with Bill Callahan on staff, I think the Titans could get a offensive tackle and a deep offensive tackle class later in the draft and develop that player. But I mean, I've been saying all along that if you add a free agent wide receiver and then you have DeAndre Hopkins and then you add a wide receiver in the draft in the first 2 rounds, that is an ideal outcome for fixing the wide receiver position for this team going into the offseason. Like high level free agent, one of your first signings, first 2 rounds, a good wide receiver, which there are a ton of, like to add that to Hopkins. And then Traylon Burks has no pressure to be anything. I think you could even consider trading him for some additional day 3 draft capital. You let Kyle Phillips be that role player. He's not somebody that you necessarily need to make plays all the time, but in certain matchups, you can get him going out of the slot and man coverage teams. That would be helpful. And I think that helps open things up for Chigakonkwo, open things up for the run game. I mean, it's just so important. So I think people, again, being Titans fans for so long and not having good receivers, we've tricked ourselves into being like, oh, you can win without good receivers because – we never had them. Like we can do it, but no. The philosophy for how this team builds the roster has to change, and I think we're seeing that happen with Rand Carthon, the development of the furthering of analytics use, data analysis, the IP models from Chad Brinker, all that different stuff. I think we're seeing a philosophical change in the organization of how they want to build the football team, and I think that'll be bared out in the moves that they make as well. And stacking the wide receiver position is absolutely one that you need to do. We don't have Patrick Mahomes. I think Will Levis is good, but we don't have Patrick Mahomes. We don't have Tom Brady. You need good wide receivers. So
yeah, I was going to say, hopefully gone are the days that Rashard Matthews is our number 1 wide receiver.
Right. It's been tough times, man. Tough
it has
times.
been. Like Terry Rubisky used to love those formations where it's a 1 wide receiver formation. Do you remember those?
Yeah.
And everything was just
we only had
together.
1 good wide receiver, so that's all they could do. You know what I mean?
And he was all right. To call him just really good would be a stretch.
Exactly. He was okay.
Yeah. So here's my next question. I'm going to move to defense. We're getting closer to the end here, but here's my next question on defense. It's possible we have we will have a new defensive scheme under Denard Wilson. If Arden Key, and Harold Landry are not fits in the new defense, do you think there's a chance that we could or should trade them?
I guess I think it's a possibility, but based on what Denard Wilson is saying, I think they are fits. I mean, at the end of the day, good pass rushers are good pass rushers. I think that Arden Key is more of a rotational pass rusher. He's a third pass rusher because he's not somebody who he gets tired, in my opinion. Yeah, and that's why he's so good in a rotational role because he uses so much energy all the time that he's having a hard time sustaining that for 70 snaps a game. I personally think Harold Landry fits in any defense. Like I'm a Harold Landry stan. I was pounding on the table to re-sign him when he was a free agent. The ACL injury is unfortunate, but we saw the back half of last year. He can get it done. I think that I got to be honest. Denard Wilson is going to run a different system, but I don't think that it's necessarily going to be like vastly different. I think that like people talk about 3-4, 4-3. Who cares? You play in nickel nowadays. You're playing with 4 down linemen, 2 linebackers, and 5 DBs. That's the majority of the game. That's the formation that you're going to be in. So I don't really care about 3-4, 4-3. I don't care. Like be able to play both. And Harold Landry, because he can stand up as a regular linebacker and put his hand in the dirt as a defensive end, he allows you to be able to mold your front and change your front and be versatile. I think that what we have heard from Denard Wilson, he's talked about, Todd Bowles, Greg Williams. These are guys who show exotic fronts. They're showing a bunch of different people on the line of scrimmage. They're blitzing guys from different angles, different places. And the Titans did a lot of those simulated pressures. I mean, Mike Vrabel and Shane Bowen after the 2021 season had a big spotlight on them from around the NFL because of their simulated pressures where, They'll have 6 guys on the line of scrimmage, and then they'll actually bring the slot cornerback and drop the defensive end on the other side, and they're only rushing 4 or 5 guys, but you don't know where that's going to come from. Those are the type of things that you're going to see from Denard Wilson as well, showing a ton of pressure, different guys dropping off, different guys blitzing. So I think based on – I mean, we're not going to know what Denard Wilson's system is because he wasn't a defensive coordinator yet, but based on his answers and press conferences and the people who he's referenced as his mentors, I think that we're going to see similar things from what we saw from Shane Bowen is what we're going to get with Denard Wilson. So I'm not as worried now after hearing him talk about how the current players fit into the system that Wilson is going to run. I think Harold Landry fits everything, and I think that Arden Key is still a good athletic pass rusher. So they could look for a trade, I guess, but Harold Landry's price tag, people aren't going to want to eat the money. So I think I'm not going to rule it out because we don't really know what Denard Wilson is going to do until we see it. But I think it's fair to say that I don't expect a trade to happen.
Yeah, I don't either. But I was just curious about them because let's be honest, like somebody like a Harold Landry, he was not a Rand Carthon guy. He was drafted by John Robinson, and then Mike Vrabel has always really liked Harold
paid by
Landry.
John Robinson too. So,
That's true.
So that's understandable to wonder.
Yeah, so I guess Arden Key would definitely be safe then because he was a Rand guy. So from back in 2021, 2022, I guess.
No, just last year. Yeah.
Yeah. That's when he played with them for the 49ers because then he had the year with the Jags, right, in 2022.
Yeah, he played for the Jags in 2022, and then the Titans signed him last offseason, a year ago.
Gotcha.
Time flies.
Yeah. That's a short conversation, but I had one more. I think I have 3 more questions. This one is Tyler Lockett. Cap casualty, in or out?
Price is everything, of course, but I could be in. I could be in on that. I could be in on that. Tyler Lockett's a good, solid player. He can get deep. I would be cool with Tyler Lockett.
Okay, yeah, I'm there with you. I wouldn't be the most excited about it, but I wouldn't. Right. I would rather have him than a Gabe Davis or something like that. Just me personally.
Yeah, that's fair.
Okay. One more question and then one more silly question at the end. All right. Awesome. First, the serious one. This was my spiel that I made about a month ago. There's a lot of people, most people. Now, it's hard to say this because we haven't had free agency. We haven't had the draft yet. But there are a lot of people who are saying, the Titans just simply aren't going to be there in 2024. Hopefully, 2025 is our year. But the way I see it, and you completely dissect this any way you want to, the way I see it, we don't have to be right at 500. And the reason I say that is usually a rebuild, there's the 1 year where you draft your quarterback, cut all the expensive veterans, you're going to suck that year. That's just usually how it is. And then it's the next year you have the cap, the next year you add all the players, the high draft picks, and then you go for it. Last year, we went into it not really wanting to be a rebuilding team. We tried to be retooled, refurbished, however you want to say it. But in all actuality, we cut a bunch of expensive players. We drafted our quarterback of the future. And we pretty well, if we were being honest with ourselves, probably knew we didn't have a real shot at a Super Bowl run or anything like that.
Right.
So now that we've cut them, we've got the money, we've got the high draft picks, and we have a promising young quarterback. What's stopping us from being the Texans from the season we just finished and us going 10-7?
Well, I think that I personally think that they have a great chance to be a playoff team. I don't think that that's really, it's just, what the high and the ceiling expectation is. And I don't think that the Titans are going to be ready to win the Super Bowl next year.
No,
you're going to have a ton of new pieces, first-year coaches. But I have been saying the same thing, Gabriel, that look at the Colts, look at the Texans. They were worse than the Titans were this year in 2022. They had top 5 draft picks. You know what I mean? They were terrible. And immediately, new coach, better quarterback play, some improvements on the roster. They flip it around and become playoff teams. Well, I know the Colts missed out because they had the winning in game at the end, but there's absolutely no reason that the Titans can't go 9-8, 10-7, and win the division and get in the playoffs. That absolutely can happen. It's just about that next step. Can they get in the playoffs, and do they think they have a realistic chance to go to the Super Bowl? My answer is going to be no. I think they need 2 off seasons to build this thing more. Will Levis is as a development, year 3 I think that gives you a better chance too. But yeah, either way, I think that it's not unreasonable to think that they can make the playoffs next year and have a winning record. I think going 500, 8-9, 9-8, 10, that should be what we're expecting. Like if you just fired Vrabel at 6-11, you should expect to be better than that the next year with all this money and all these assets and a new coach. So I definitely think that it's fair to expect them to be a competitive team and maybe win more games than they lose.
Okay, I gotcha. All right, sounds good to me. At least give us something to be excited for, because when we got mathematically eliminated late last year, I was just telling my brother, I was like, this is the first time that we have had meaningless football since 2015?
Yeah.
Basically. It was insane. Yeah. So last question. I think this might be purple. Let me see. If I change my lights. Purple.
Awesome.
Purple. All right. What if the Vikings are going through a complete rebuild and they have no need to pay Justin Jefferson everything and they put him on the trade block? Would you be interested in trading for Justin Jefferson, and what price would you be okay with giving up?
I would be interested, but the reality is the Vikings are going to need multiple first-round picks. I'm just not willing to. The thing is when you trade for a guy in that situation, similarly like we're talking T. Higgins right now, similar like Brandon Ayuk is a name, it's not just that you got to trade the capital to get that player. You then got to pay them too. And the reality is, if you want to win in the NFL, you have to have cheap, high-level players, and that happens from the draft. Like think of Malik Neighbors is a top 10 wide receiver in the NFL by year 2. You're paying him $8 million a year. Okay, Justin Jefferson may be the best wide receiver in the NFL, but you're paying him, $28 million a year, $30 million a year. So Malik Neighbors may not be the number 1 wide receiver in the NFL, but for the value that he'll bring at the price that you're going to pay him on a rookie contract. So when you trade for a guy like that, not only are you giving them a big contract, which is going to hit you on the cap space, you're also giving yourself less opportunity to have cheap, high-level play, which you're going to need. Like, there's just no way around it. I mean, look at the Chiefs and some of the players that they've drafted in the last few years. That's how you can pay Patrick Mahomes $1,000 billion, jillion dollars a year. You could pay Chris Jones a bajillion dollars a year because you've got so many players around them who are making under their market value of what their talent would garner them on the open market because you drafted them. So to me, it's just a dangerous game. And that's why I want T. Higgins. I want Brandon Ayuk on the team. They're good players, but I don't want the Titans to make those trades because they're not one player away and they're not in a position where they can sacrifice their draft capital and take a big chunk out of their cap space. It's just, that's the dangerous game that you got to play. If you're the Eagles, trade for A.J. Brown. You need that one more piece, put you over the top. Sure, Miami, you're going to do that with Tyreek Hill, and you have a surplus of options to build your roster out. Sure, but the Titans are just not in that position, in my opinion, with the draft capital that they have, because you're going to give up your first-round pick, your second-round pick, either way, you're giving up somebody who's going to be making less than $10 million a year, who in theory could be one of the better players in the NFL at their position. So the Titans just cannot give up the opportunity to get really good, cheap players. They can't.
Yeah, I figured. It's one of such. Every offseason, there's some future Hall of Fame type player that's like, oh, he could be tradable.
Right,
so it's always fun to have the conversation, but you're pretty well aware it's not.
Hey, the Vikings did trade Stephon Diggs and Randy Moss, so they've done it before.
That's true. That's true. So they're
done it before.
A little unpredictable. There we go. My Titans blue back again. All right. So I guess that's all that I have for you again, right at a half hour. So I appreciate you joining the show today. It was a lot of fun. Make sure y'all are following him on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it, at Tic Tac Titans. He has his Tuesday to, or I guess it's Sunday to Friday, or Sunday to Thursday. You make your videos for Locked on Titans.
Yeah. Technically, that is their release schedule on YouTube is Sunday through Thursday. But a lot of people listen to the podcast audio, like in their car and stuff. And most of those people are listening Monday through Friday. The YouTube comments always like to remind me when I say, like, I loved themed days. You know, like way back Wednesday, freaking game plan Friday, recap Monday. I love names
crossover
like that.
Thursday.
Crossover Thursday. Like, I love that stuff. But the YouTube crowd, they hate when I call crossover Thursday when the show came out on Wednesday night. So, yeah, there is a little confusion in the schedule there, but you're getting the content when you want it. That's what really matters.
Yeah, exactly. So make sure you're following him there, Locked on Titans, like I said, on YouTube. And he also has his new YouTube channel, which is called what again?
Tic Tac Titans. I focus on the X's and O's.
Okay.
It's a little corny, but you see what I'm saying.
Yeah, I see what you're doing there. All right. Well, again, thank you for joining us. We're going to go ahead and wrap this one up. So we'll see y'all. Tighten up.